Hello, Groveland Township. Today's video is being done on February 24th, 2021. First, let me explain to you and apologize for the fact that our cable channel has pretty much been off the air for several months. It turns out that the server that works the cable service at the head end died on us late last year, and it ends up that the only people that can put equipment on that have to meet a certain criteria for Comcast, and the only vendor that could do it for us took a while to get it because the product ended up coming out of China, the only approved one. And then when it got here, a part was missing, and it just went on and on. So we're sorry for the lapse in service, but everything's back up and running with new equipment now. In today's video, I thought I'd just give you a brief update on what's happened recently here. Many of you may know this and some of you may not, but every year the township has to redo its budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And for the township, unlike the state of Michigan or the federal government, our fiscal year is from April 1st through March 31st. So every year, and we've done this for 25 years, we have a work session sometime in February where the board members get together. I solicit them for input on whatever they want to discuss for the upcoming year. We work through the budget issues, talk about things like raises, personnel, projects for the township, and so forth. And then we come to a consensus on it. When we're done with that workshop meeting, we actually present it at the board's regular March meeting so that it can be approved and ready for April 1 to start with the new numbers. So really, when we're all paying our taxes in the winter and everything, all that money is held at the township in the cash reserves and not released to either the township or the fire department until April 1 of the next year, which is when the fiscal year starts for both the township and the fire department. So for any of you that may not have been aware of this process, it's been exactly the same for at least 25 years that I've been here. We always do it the same way. And those meetings are work sessions during the day in February. The last one we had was on February the 17th. It was noticed on our website, and if you didn't get a chance to see it and you want to see what happened, you're welcome to go to Zoom because we Zoom that meeting as well as we will the March meeting. And this is kind of probably for a lot of you may be boring because it's a work session. It's not intended to be like a regular township meeting. It's a lot of give and take and discussion between the different board members. But I'll give you highlights of a few of the things that happened. First of all, the township's revenue is in very good condition. We had anticipated in the middle of last year with the COVID hitting that us and every township we knew of anticipated significant drops in our revenue going forward. In fact, we had said at an earlier meeting that we estimated we might get hit for as much as $40,000 to $60,000 or even $80,000 off of our state shared revenue number, which is usually around $420,000 a year. As it actually turned out, and we believe this is primarily because online sales were so good, and now, if you recall, about a year and a half ago, they started collecting sales tax in states for online sales. We actually ended up with the revenue going up about $20,000. So if you had looked at our budget being planned late last year, you probably would have thought we need to really tighten up because we're going to have a real tight year. But as it actually turned out, by the time we got to the budget session, the budget was in much better shape. And it's not just us, it's pretty much every township in the state of Michigan saw those additional revenues. So we were up about $20-some thousand instead of down 40 to 60. The fund balance in the township is generally around $7.6 million. About 4 to 4.8 of that roughly is the operating funds for the year that are collected on the winter tax bill, and also the cash reserves, which we have decided to take a very conservative estimate. And our goal is to have a full year's reserves for the township, and we're pretty close to this now for the fire department. Due to the efforts of Chief Mason and the fire department, we're pretty close to a full year's reserve back where we needed to be in the fire department too. When you take those operating expenses and reserves that we keep mandatorily, we have about, roughly speaking, $3 million left in the infrastructure fund, and this has deliberately been set aside for major projects, either road paving projects or the development of the township property. So our finances, where we thought we were going to get hit, actually look very good this year. There's been some good growth in the township, and we expect now that the ORV park has been opened officially last year and will be opened all of this summer, that's going to generate some new building activity in the area, and it should help bring our property tax assessment total value for the township up, and that's what really drives one of the big buckets of revenue. One of the things I did for the board, if you happen to watch the meeting, is I explained to them basically where our revenues come from, and there's three overall large buckets. The biggest part of it is the state shared revenue that comes from the state, and that's the one I told you that has sales tax receipts and so forth partitioned out for all the different municipalities, and that was a little better this year than instead of being worse. The next bucket is the one we're probably all familiar with, and that's the part of the money that comes off of the property taxes. And if you look at your tax assessment notice when you get it, you'll see that the part that the township gets is actually very small. The township gets slightly under 1 mil for operating it, and it's in the rough range for an average home about $120 a year for operating the township. That's the second part. For our township, unlike a lot of them, we have a third bucket, which is really what drives all of the projects we've done here in the last 25 years and everything pretty much that's planned going forward. And those are the projects which we have strung together over the years as on the township's property. If you remember when we got the old Stablex landfill site, it was terrible, and we've had it cleaned up substantially, and we've been developing projects on there, and that's really where a big part of our Dixie Byway project's going to be. And so those projects now actually generate far more money for the operation of the township and its infrastructure improvements than the property taxes do for the whole township put together. So financially, we're in pretty good shape. Going forward, we're planning on moving the Station 1 on Dixie Highway to a new location like we said we would, behind the Mavis building, the big blue building on the township's 90 acres there. And the prints are in for final adjustments at the architect. As soon as they come back, we will send them up to Lansing to see if we can get the sign off from the Michigan State Police. It's a little bit harder working through everything right now because up in Lansing, almost everybody is working remote from their home. So it's a little harder to coordinate some of this, but we intend to move the facility over there into a brand new building this year, and the state police with them. And one of the other changes we're making is we're taking a part-time employee who is currently Janelle Keller, working in our office, and the deputy clerk to the clerk's office has been a part-time job. We're going to make that job full-time, but the balance of her work is really going to shift over to the building and planning department where we have one employee right now. What's happened is there's been a real uplift in the amount of work for building and planning stuff, and we need to get some help for her. So we're going to make Janelle a full-time employee, and Janelle's additional pay cost comes from the building permits, not from any kind of a tax increase. So it's the extra work that's coming in is going to fund the extra necessity to put an additional half a person into that building department. We're going to continue to look at the sewer project. We're getting fairly close to deciding whether or not the Dixie Byway sewer line is going to go in or not. I hope to know in a few weeks. When we conclude that project with the county, whatever we decide to do, we'll cover it on a separate video for everybody so that you know. But again, just to remind you, the intent of the sewer project was just to help the development on the Dixie Byway itself. There is no intention nor any plan to extend any sewer lines anywhere into the township and start changing the basic master plan for the whole rest of the township. We all value the large lot, low density, and that's exactly what we intend to keep going forward. The sewer's principal benefit would be it would be more environmentally beneficial for things like the DNR lands, which has to do a major upgrade on their treatment plant just to be able to stay open. The county long-term could use it. The township's property could use it, and a couple of other larger developments up in Holly, like the Shannon Industries, could use it. So whether or not that happens, we'll let you know shortly, but we're going to continue to pursue that. We're going to take a look at some other alternatives. We're going to revisit the medical marijuana situation, and I'm going to do some investigation, and when we get that concluded, I'll bring it back to the township board, and it'll be at one of the public meetings. I anticipate that potentially after the March meeting, we may have the meeting room open for meetings again instead of just on Zoom, but we'll have to wait and see what the state actually says after March 31st. Our census calculation, which we think will be higher than we were in 2010, but still probably lower than we were in the year 2000, won't be out as timely as we thought. Originally, we expected it in April, but because of delays that they say were created by the President Trump canceling and then opening up some of the extensions for the census takers, they feel they won't have it until later this year. So I expect September or October is when we'll actually know what our new census number is for 2020. There's a couple of other minor projects we talked about there, some upgrades to some of the audio-visual equipment that we're going to use for the meeting room, some lighting upgrades in the township office that are exceptionally cost-effective right now, and a few other minor odds and ends that we'd be taking care of. That stuff's covered in that meeting. Some of it will have to be brought up at a future meeting if we actually go ahead with it. And we're working on trying to solidify a deal with the levee company that operates most of the mines in our township to see if we can get some gravel for our roads from them at frankly no cost for several years. And I think we're very close to finishing that agreement, and both parties seem to be working to that same end right now. We'll let you know going forward. We also made a recommendation for a raise for all of the employees in all the fire departments. This year it's at 3%. If you look over the township's budgets for the last 25 years that I've been here, the average raise in the township is less than 3% a year. There have been a couple that were more. There were some that were none for 5 years. We've always treated everybody in the fire department and the township board the same, basically going forward. And we intend to do that going forward now as well. Most of the revenue that we have planned for these different projects comes from that third part of the bucket that I was talking to you about, which is the projects we've put on the township property that generate money. They're not necessarily perpetual forever, so we can't use them for everything, but we do put it away and do it for capital improvement projects like road paving and things of that nature. And again, this year we should have significant new gravel dropped on the road that was postponed last year because one of the yards making it sold it out from under us to another place. And we're going to have also Barron Road. You may have noticed the work beginning on that. That should also be paved this year. That's pretty much it. Our goals for next year, the main ones are to finish out the analysis on the sewer project going forward and decide whether it's going to happen or not. Moving Fire Station 1 and the MSP, beginning development of the township's property at Dixie and I-75 and some promotional material we should have with that, finalizing a new road gravel arrangement that should last us several years, and finally the final finished completion of the master plan, and of course adding Janelle as full-time personnel to help in the building department. So until the next video, have a great day. We'll try and get them more regularly now that the equipment is finished. Thank you.